The broad definition of anatomically incorrect poses is a posture in which the human body, the person who's practicing, their body, is not predisposed to practicing without damage to either a joint, ligament, or nerve center that's running through, so nerve line that's running through that part of their body. In other words, poses where, let's say somebody's super tight and they're trying to put their leg behind their head, right? For some people, they might hurt their knee because the hip is too tight, right? So they don't have that rotation available, and therefore that pose might be wrong for them. Then there are some that nobody, I think, should do, like the rotation of the ankle back, the 2-foot external rotation of the ankles, where they sit backwards on their heels. Most people should not do that unless maybe if you're born into a contortionistic family and you're a circus performer, maybe you need to do that. But you know there will be consequence, probably. You know, with flexibility, extreme flexibility, comes instability, right? With extreme rigidity and strength often comes lack of flexibility. So what we want is a balance of strength and flexibility. And that's it, generally speaking, for most people. If you make your body too flexible, it's not good either. You know, you used to think that every form of flexible, the more flexible you get, the better. And that, we found, was not true, actually. You want to be somewhat flexible and strong, right? Kind of like sports equipment. Since you only have one, right? You only got one body. But it needs to do a lot of different sports, a lot of different things. It has to walk, it has to run a little bit, it has to sit and drive, it has to maybe skateboard and snowboard and ride bicycles, right? So you kind of have this multi-use body, and therefore you don't want to be a super specialist either. Okay, so a perfect example of a specialist apparatus would be a bicycle. You don't necessarily want to be an extremely lightweight racing 10-speed, because a racing circle track 10-speed doesn't have any brakes. You guys, you know that? There are no brakes on a race bike. A true circle track race bike has no brakes. It has one large gear. They don't have to brake because they can just coast. It's made for one specific thing, to go fast. It weighs 10 pounds. So somewhere around 4 kilos, or maybe a little more, but barely. And it can only go fast. But if you try to take it off-road, you would destroy the bike in seconds. It wouldn't even work. Like within a minute, the tires would be flat, right? So, and then on the other hand, on this extreme other side of it, you have something called a downhill bicycle. Now it's made to coast downhill. It weighs about 55 pounds. It only has like a minimal gear so that you could pedal. If you hit a rut, you could pedal out of it. That's it. It's made to coast downhill. It's too heavy for the city. You can't go fast. The tires are this thick. They're huge. They're really fat. They're really built for one thing. You don't want to make your body like that either, because then it's only built to do, again, one thing. But our bodies need to be sort of in the middle. Kind of like a multi-use, what we call, in bicycle terminology, it's called an urban assault, or a crossbreed bicycle. That's what we used to call them. Crossbreed meant you can go a little bit fast, you could do a little off-road, it does have gears, so you could actually like go up hills, and you could go on a track if you wanted to. You just wouldn't be as fast as somebody on a 10-pound bicycle, right? But that's kind of where you want your body to be, somewhere in the middle like that, where it's this multi-use. Because you can train your body to be a race apparatus, right? You can make your body into only really good at running marathons. Right? When we look at marathon runners, they look emaciated. They're very, very thin. And they have very little muscle mass. You take the same person that runs marathons and tell them to go lift weights, they're not going to be highly functional at lifting weights. Right? And vice versa. Take a heavy weightlifter, one of the heavy lifters, the 600-pound people that lift 800 pounds over their head. Take them on just any other sport, yoga, for instance, and they're going to struggle. right? Because they've made their body what I just call mission specific, right? It's made to do one thing. Okay, so that's something that we call a biological advantage through adaptation. The reason you need to know about this stuff is because if you're a yoga teacher, then it's really important that you know how to assess each individual. You get a really short, stocky guy who lifts weights 4 hours a day for years on end, and he comes in and he's like, man, I don't know why, but as hard as I try, I can't do Baddha Konasana.
Just what are you saying to him? Like that it takes time to like modify it?
You would say you have trained your body to be very specific in one way. Okay. And because of that, all of that stuff you're doing is making it harder for you to be flexible. And so you may need to, what are you saying? I shouldn't lift weights?
There was one guy in class yesterday, and he was like, you know,
muscular.
Was like just out of muscle, and he could barely like move, you know.
Right. That's why he's here, probably. He's trying to
get
change. Okay. Yeah, because they're not great cross athletes oftentimes. Not always, but a lot of times the big weightlifters are not. So that's a now you have, so that is a biological advantage by decision, and then you also have natural biological advantage or disadvantage, right? They're two different things. A natural advantage would be somebody who wants to do handstand, and they have naturally a big upper body and really small legs, right? That's a biological advantage to handstand. Because when they press the handstand, they got these tiny legs and a big, strong, you know, giant shoulders, shorter arms, shorter torso, and very short legs. Okay?
So it's like Michael Phelps with swimming?
Right, Michael Phelps had the biological advantage to swim. He has a short, flat body, kind of shorter legs. His feet are pretty flat and like they make good flippers, and he has really long arms.
Yeah.
So he's like, and he's got a very flat, wide chest. His body's like built, you know, he's built like a flounder, you know, I mean, he's really like flat, and he really is. And his arms are super long, like he's got these like amazing, his body.
Is he tall?
He's tall, but his body, like,
but his proportions.
Yeah,
proportional.
Yeah, he's supposed to be like 6'8" or something for his like upper body, but then
his legs are too short.
Yeah, he has a biological advantage. So that's like a birthright biological advantage, which was also enhanced by his training. But he does have, those measurements are there. And we can see what happens. When you line up the combination of specific training with biological advantage, you get somebody who's wearing, you know, 10 gold medals. Because he had both things running for him. You know, for me, if I wanted to be a football player, I'd have to try twice as hard. Because my frame is just, you know, not built for football. At least not in the Western. Maybe rugby, but not football.
But maybe you might be a fast runner.
Yeah, I'd be a good running back or something, or a good wide receiver. Yeah, but I wouldn't be good at football in general. Because also, if I got tackled a bunch of times, I would get damaged. My frame is not built for those kind of tackles. Okay, so any questions on that?
So biological advantage and natural advantage are not the same thing.
No, it is. Natural advantage is like a natural biological advantage. Natural or biological advantage are interchangeable. Some people would call it a natural, and some people call it a biological advantage. And then there's also adaptation, meaning when you lift weights, your body gets bigger muscle, and there, as you keep lifting weights, you develop you develop a biological advantage through training, right? Because you can like double the amount you can lift. Like if whatever you could lift today, if you lifted weights for a year under the guidance of a trainer, you could probably lift about 70% more than the first day you went in after a year. I was able to double my bench pressing in about a year. So I went from like 100 pounds to I could bench press 215 pounds at my highest. So more than double. And at that time, almost 70% more of my body weight. Okay, practice of verbalizing, posture critique of voice technique. And then we're going to cover also props. So let's go into, all right, so let's go into props. So I'm going to just grab a prop first real quick. So there are different types of props. There are props of necessity, which this one would be. This is the one where it protects your wrist. You can monkey grip this, and then your wrist isn't in a back bend. And they're very specific. It's mainly, now, the maker of Grippets would not want me to say this. This is mainly for people that have injured wrists. They're saying, no, everyone should use them all the time. We're not going to use these, generally speaking, unless our wrists are injured and we need it. Okay, what it does, it prevents a back bend. So you can use it like in a push-up type situation. You could use it like this, where you're in a push-up and your hand is level to it. And as you do your push-up, your wrist is not bent. So can you guys see like how now my pressure is right straight? I don't have any real back bend of the wrist. Not anything that matters anyway, because all the pressure is just on the heel and flesh of my palm. Right? So this is a prop this is like a therapeutic prop, meaning I want to prevent injury as a result. And then you also just have a prop that means sometimes it's like a skill element. I'm not able to do balancing. Whenever I go to do a balance pose, let's pretend that I'm a beginner, and I keep falling over. Whoa! Whoa! I can't get it. So I would take the prop, and if I'm standing straight, I put it over a little bit to the right. So when I come up, let's say I'm in Warrior 3, and I'll keep losing, I go up. See, I'm so used to not using props, I fall when I use them. But see how now I have the prop, and you see how I can use this prop, and now I'm not going to fall, right? So I'm using the prop to raise the ground. I'm using the prop so I don't have to reach all the way down and I won't fall. I could also use the prop with two hands. So I'm coming down, and instead of putting my hands on the ground, I'm going to dig in Warrior 3. I'm going to use the prop to just stabilize. Okay, really good for beginners.
But isn't it also like if you're not so flexible and you can't touch the ground?
Yes, to raise the ground. Right, that's what I was saying. It's like not really flexible, I'm going to use it to raise the ground. Okay? So like, I can't reach the floor when I do a forward, whatever it is. Let's say, that one is a perfect example. I'm balancing, and I'm so inflexible, I can't reach the ground, but I want the stability because I'm doing a pose. So I would take a block, and it lifts up the ground. It makes it easier for me. Because look, this requires some flexibility in here, right? My hamstring has to be flexible. Ardha Chandrasana. Some people will lose their balance because they're so tight that they actually fall over as they go into Ardha Chandrasana. In that case, you grab a block. You go, here, take this, Joe, take this block. And anytime you start losing your balance, grab a block instead. A key mistake people make with a block is they put it front center, and it actually shouldn't be. The block should always be, or 90% of the time, when both hands are on the ground. Someone's struggling in Warrior 3, yes, you can put it in the middle. But a lot of times, instead of it being front and center, it needs to be off to the right or left. And I'll show you why. Just like your hands are a little bit shoulder width apart, so your shoulder, when you're balancing, so is your shoulder. See? Doesn't that make sense? Look. Instead of having it here, look, it's not going to give me any balance. But here, off to the side, it does. Right? So when you give out a block, when you first lay it down, you're going to lay it to the one side or the other. You say, keep this off to the side when you're in balancing Warrior 3. Keep it off to the side when you're in half moon pose. And if I'm in a twist, and it's my left hand that's going down, then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to keep it off to my left side, so that, see from the front view how this makes sense? You see that? So I've got the stability under my shoulder. Okay? Common mistake, they put it right in the middle. And then there's no balance there. Look, if it's here, the reason I can do it is because I don't need the block, but I've got no stability to catch myself from falling. I don't recommend having them do bridge and putting it under the center of their spine. Don't do that in the studio. It's not recommended. I've seen extreme injuries occur from this because they don't know where to put them. And they put them a corner on one vertebra. And then they put all the weight on it, and it dislodges the vertebra. Yeah, I had a friend, one of my friends did that. Don't use them that way. You can use them under the leg. Another way is if you have a biological disadvantage, whether for whatever reason, you have really tight hamstrings or tight iliotibial band. Someone goes into pigeon, they're way off the ground, they don't want to lean to the hip. So then you would take the block, and you would put the block underneath here, like that. So you could still get the stretch on the side of the leg. Just like you roll when you do, like, have you ever done rolling? There's a nut where you thigh roll. Okay, so you put it just the same way. Because now it protects my knee, right? Because when the block is underneath, I've got full protection of the knee. Because my my femur is resting on the actual block. But if my hip is tight, and I'm up like this, cranking the knee, that's asking for meniscal problems. Meniscus can get damaged. All right? But so the block can support the femur, can support a part of your body to prevent injury. And it can also be used, this is just in power yoga, it's not used very much. As a matter of fact, to be honest with you, in my style, I try to get you off of the blocks. I try to use them only as when necessary. I try to get you to a point where when you're a pro, you don't need blocks anymore. You know, they're really for you when you're beginning or you're injured. And when you're injured, you're trying to get better so you don't need the blocks anymore. Does that make sense? Because eventually you shouldn't have to use them. Right?
So as a strap?
The strap. I do not use straps. The only time I would ever use a strap is in a private instruction lesson, and in that case I would wrap. I usually used to use it like in a standing balancing pose, but see, my belief about straps is that if you can't reach your foot, then you should be doing it like this anyway. So you develop the strength and the balance first, and by the time you keep practicing, eventually you'll be able to do Gita Padangusthasana. Extended one leg, hand to big toe punch. Okay, so I don't use straps. Actually, I don't like them in the classes either because people they're fine to like hold your foot in front. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Then they tend to, when you're in bridge, the teacher will like wrap it under your back and then pull. And again, if it's pulling on one vertebra, then it can dislocate one vertebra a little bit, a subluxation. It only takes 1 millimeter. 1 millimeter. You guys all are on metric system, right? Okay, so 1 millimeter can pinch off a nerve. That's it. Some people even less than a millimeter. It's like as small as you could look through as you pinch your fingers together, and that's less than a millimeter. There's not a lot of room in there. There's a lot of room in here, like in the hip. There's a lot of room in the ankle and the knee, generally speaking. You can get away with some stuff. But in the spine, there's very little room for error. Once that spine moves laterally or posteriorly or anteriorly, you cause problems. So don't use a lot of straps. Huh?
Especially the cervical.
Especially the cervical. Why?
Which is the nerves.
But there's a lot of nerves really throughout the whole spine, isn't there? There's like nerves that run, they go all through the whole spine.
Probably a lumbar, is it?
But the damage to the cervical spine nerve, the neck is more prone to pinching off nerves because it's so small, it's so delicate.
Because the head is heavy.
Because it's a delicate structure. Look at it. Look at how small it is. We went over the spine, though, right? Yeah. Look how small it is, right? Compared to this. I mean, this is just a much more robust structure. Even to here, especially, because this is all supported, huh?
No, it's nothing around up there.
Yeah, it's just that it's really it's just that it's more likely to get injured, the cervical spine. Its design is so tiny that it can get injured more. But I would say the whole spine, specifically the cervical and the lumbar spine, is more prone to getting the injuries. And that's because the thoracic has this. It has the ribs. So it has all this balancing structure to it. You know, it's got all this other support. So it doesn't get injured as easily as these more floating surfaces, right? Where there's nothing really around it. And plus, your neck has this giant, marble on top of it, a bowling ball, that is supporting. So it's much more likely to sustain an injury into the neck than it is anywhere else. People also, because we all drive, we tend to get whiplash and stuff, and the occurrence of that is very high. Once a body part is injured, it's often more prone to re-injury, either by structure or psychological trauma. It can remember the injury and lock itself up by itself. It can actually muscle spasm through post-traumatic stress syndrome.
They said the cell memory actually holds all that.
Whatever it is, yeah, the memory, whatever maybe it is. I don't know. All I know is that it is true. Whatever the cause is, whatever the cause. Sometimes it does. Like people ask me about with hot yoga, why hot yoga? Why does it make me feel this way? And I have a bunch of reasons why, but I often say we don't really know. We just know that it does. We don't have to know all of the details of why a light, how it functions, but we know that it lights the room and it works well. I usually do have a lot of answers, but sometimes I don't have the time. It's usually like before class, and I got to get up there and teach or something, and that's when I'm like, I won't go into all the details as to why. Improve circulation, you lose weight, you deal with stress differently, your mind is present. All of those things. Your chemistry changes, your glands function better, and all of those things cause a ripple effect that makes a bunch of different parts of your body heal. The heat also promotes flexibility and promotes your body to sweat more, and so all of these different things together seems to be really beneficial. And the reason we know it is because we're all gaining these benefits. Have you guys gained benefit from doing yoga? Yeah, some, right?
It should make me lose weight, though.
Yeah, it should make you lose some size, but you definitely, the diet element has to be there as well. You should lose some weight. It's very rare that someone doesn't lose weight through yoga. Oftentimes they compensate. They start eating, it's also eating. It's eating. You end up eating more because you're burning off the calories, and then so you eat. And then you might be taking in more calories. There's something, never forget, the amount of calories you burn and the amount of calories you take in. That's the equation. You can make, the reason we know this to be a fact is that you can take a paraplegic, right? Somebody who is, or even a quadriplegic for that matter, and lower their calorie intake, and they will lose weight. Right? That's somebody who's totally paralyzed from the neck down. They will lose weight. You just have to change the diet.
But mine's usually because I gain muscles, so then I gain.
Right, you gain some muscle, so you gain a little bit of weight, and that's okay. Yeah, the density of the muscle is greater. What about size, though? Have you noticed anything?
Yeah, I don't weigh myself. I just do it
by size. Yeah.
So
Yeah, but you're still not I'm not concerned about your size.
No, but I think it's because I eat too much because of the smoking too much.
Yeah. There we go. Probably. Usually when we research it deep enough, we usually find that it's diet. Because if you're doing yoga every day, then it's diet because you're exercising enough. You've got enough exercise, for sure. You know, it's pretty hard exercise. I mean, this stuff is very dense exercise. Okay. Huh? Your scale's broken?
I just noticed that after the class, I feel like I'm starving, but at night, I notice that if I drink water, it's gone. So basically, my body just tells me drink, and I interpret this signal as I'm starving, like I want to eat.
Right.
So maybe that too, because you lose a lot of water.
Yeah, I think that when you exercise, your body does require more calories, and so your body is just trying to, you know, it's trying to compensate. So that's why it takes a lot of discipline to lose weight. You know, like when I do compliment some of my friends that are models, and I think sometimes I wonder if they think I'm joking with them, because I'll say, God, you're really disciplined, you're really talented. And because it takes extreme discipline to look that way, generally speaking. These women, they starve themselves. And I don't know whether that's healthy or not, but I know it's their thing. Like, that's what they have to do as a model. You have to be thin. It is your job to look a certain way. That's the fact. And so it is like a skill and a discipline to train and look that way. Even though they do have a biological advantage. They were born pretty, but they could not be in that, like swimsuit models and stuff. These are people that really train hard and like eat very, very little. I'm not saying that it's healthy, I'm just saying that is the profession. But it is what it is. It sucks, but it is. And they're very... All right, so now we've covered a couple things. We've covered some anatomically incorrect poses. None of those are really in our sequence. My sequence, I took out all the poses that I thought were incorrect. The only one that we do, which is questionable, is the fish, the back bend of the neck. But you can keep your head down on the ground and just do a half fish pose. It's fine, right? And if you get a bunch of complaints about that, just take it out of the set then, if you see it. Okay? Is fish on your script? It's not in the script, right? I believe I took it out of the script itself. Yeah. So use the short form script. That's your strongest document in the whole teacher training. And then, of course, the HPF set. That's a good one, too. It's good to know the HPF. How many of you guys like HPF? I'm curious.
I like it.
Oh, good. So you guys like it. All right. I don't know. I wasn't sure. We've had very mixed reviews from my students.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it's a very valid set. So I want to teach. I'm standing behind it. I like it. It's good because we do so much flow. It's good to do an HPF set.
Exactly, it's completely different from the other ones. It's much more, so much more time. It's good to...
Yeah, you can hold. Yeah. Yeah, good. Well, I'm glad you like it. But even if you didn't like it, it's still good to know it. You know? Okay. But good. No, I'm glad. I'm actually surprised that you guys like it because the other class, none of them like. Well, not none of them, but a lot of them didn't like it.
Yeah, I used to go to Core Power,
Mm-hmm.
and I really liked it.
Good. That's good. That helps definitely because then you'll probably teach it. Okay. So all right. So let's go into now. So we've covered the only poses that I really see being done that are anatomically incorrect, aside from pinky handstand. We've covered all of those. So there is no pinky handstand because it wouldn't be. That's not a good idea. So we're going to go and practice now a little bit. Grab a block or a grip. And then since there's only two dyads, you guys can break into groups of 2 and practice. And I want you to just see what it's like using a block. Okay? So practice doing the balance sequence using the block. Even though you don't need it. Because I want to make sure you're at least holding them correctly.